the next items, it will be talking about Lev Vygotsky. The theory of Lev Vygotsky is social development theory. Number 25. The idea that children's knowledge, ideas, attitudes, and values develop through interaction with others is emphasized in one theory of cognitive development. Whose view is this? Okay, according to Lev Vygotsky, whenever you need to interact to learn, that is under social development theory. So let me paraphrase this one. If you are Lev Vygotsky, you would believe that if you want to teach something to someone, there should be social interaction. For instance, if gusto mong i-teach yung Korean language, if si Lev Vygotsky yan, he would tell you to go to Korea, interact with the natives there, talk with them. That is how you will learn. So the keyword, always the keyword of Vygotsky is social interaction, socialization. Pag makita mo yung ganyan, that is Lev Vygotsky. This is a paraphrase of what I have said. Social interaction plays a fundamental role in the development of cognition. So aside from the keyword, the social interaction, Lev Vygotsky is also linked with the word or the phrase MKO, or more knowledgeable others. When you say more knowledgeable others, this refers to someone or something na may better understanding or a higher ability level kesa sa learner na makakatulong sa iyo para i-complete mo yung task. It can be your teachers, pwede yung guardian mo, pwede yung teacher mo, pwede yung tutor mo. But it is not only limited to people. More knowledgeable others can also be computer, workbooks, books, or modules, as long as it's anything that can help you accomplish the task. Another thing associated with Lev Vygotsky is the scaffolding. So when you say scaffolding, this is the kind of help or support or assistance that an adult gives. So yan yung keyword ni Lev Vygotsky sa any help that you give. Scaffold yan or scaffolding. So what is the difference with scaffolding with any other kinds of help or assistance? So I will give a practical example. For example, you want to teach the child how to open or how to unzip a bag. Diba? Most of you will just open the bag. Sasabihin mo, ganito yung gawin mo. You will open the zipper and then zip it back. Pakita mo sa child. And then after that one, you will say, no, sige, ikaw naman. You unzip the bag and then zip it again, just like what I did. That is not scaffolding. That is what we call modeling. Pinapakopy mo. Whereas, if you do it scaffolding type, what you will do is, you will just maybe open it 1 inch, and then you will say, okay, you continue. So that's the difference. You don't do everything. You just do a percentage of the task, and then let the child finish. Or, like for example, if you want to teach the child how to open the water bottle, if you don't do scaffolding, if for instance, modeling yung ginawa mo, so tendency is you might open the bottle, close it again while the child is observing, and then let the child do the same thing. But if you're using scaffolding, according to Lev Vygotsky, you will just twist the bottle a little bit, or twist the cap a little bit, and then let the child finish it. So that is the concept of scaffolding. So much for that. Number 26. Cooperative learning will be most likely used by. So what is the highlight of cooperative learning? Diba? It's from the root word cooperation or cooperate. So what will you do for so that there will be cooperation? So diba, para merong cooperation, there will also be social interaction. Because how will you cooperate if you don't interact, if you don't socialize? So I mentioned the word social interaction, and that is related to Lev Vygotsky again. Number 27. Vygotsky would strongly agree to which of the following? So, diba, going back to what I have said, Lev Vygotsky, ang focus niya is social interaction, socialization, interaction. Basta ganyang mga keywords Lev Vygotsky yan. So, let's look at the following words or the following options to see alin dyan ang kay Vygotsky. Margaret got a perfect score in the test. The teacher posts her name on the bulletin board. So, na-perfect siya, tapos pinost yung name niya sa bulletin board para ma-motivate, para ma-feel yung bata na, yes, ako yung highest. Is that Lev Vygotsky's theory? No. This is more on reinforcement. Specifically, this is more on operant conditioning by B.F. Skinner. So, letter A is not kay Vygotsky, but it's by Skinner. So, yung kay Skinner, we will discuss it in detail later. So let's look at letter B. The teacher assigned in the hinterland observed the children did not know proper hygiene. She taught them hygiene by exhibiting the behavior herself. So, pinakita niya ang hygiene by starting with herself. Ginawa niyang role model ang kanyang self. So, that is modeling, and that is by Albert Bandura. So, letter B is by Bandura, letter A is by Skinner, so hindi yan. Also, Bandura and Skinner will be discussed in detail later. So, letter C. When the pupils are beginning a new task, the teacher provides models, coaching, and feedback. As the pupils grow in competence, the teacher gives less support and more opportunities for independent work. So, ito ay ang example ng scaffolding by Levi Gotsky na kung beginning pa ng new task, so of course, so grabe yung ibibigay mo na coaching and feedback. But then kung nakita mo na medyo alam na nung student, so you will loosen your help, you will loosen the scaffold that you are giving. So letter C is by Vygotsky. So we will no longer deal with letter D because this is more on behaviorism. This is not related to Vygotsky. So 27 is Charlie. 28. Which of the following shows that principle of scaffolding advocated by Vygotsky? So let's start first with letter D. Let the child discover how to unzip the bag. This is more on discovery method. Now, sige, you look at the bag, discover how are you going to open it. No, this is not scaffolding. This is discovery. You tell the child how to unzip the bag. This is direct instruction. Sasabihin mo, ganyan yung gawin mo, i-unzip mo, hawakan mo yan, ganyan. You will just verbally give instruction. That is not scaffolding. This is direct instruction. And then, letter B, you unzip the lunch bag yourself, thereby demonstrating to the child how to unzip the bag. So, sa kanyang harapan, in-unzip mo yung bag, tapos you sinira mo, and then after that one, demonstrate mo. So, expected na pinagawa mo rin sa kanya. This is modeling by Albert Bandura. Let's look at letter A. You unzip the lunch bag an inch or two, then allow the child to unzip it all the way. So this is now an example of scaffolding. So I have mentioned this example earlier. And if you're going to teach through scaffolding, wag mo ubusin lahat yung task. You just give a sample and then let the child continue, such as the letter A option. You unzip it lang, maybe an inch or maybe two, and then let the child continue. And not letter B, because letter B is modeling and not scaffolding. So, number 29. This is not among the examples of what Vygotsky suggests as scaffolding that assists a child in being able to accomplish a task independently with judicious assistance from the most advanced peer or teacher. Now, if you look at here, a lot of these options are actually not scaffolding. Like you demonstrate swimming strokes for the child to follow. This is modeling. You loosen the container a bit and let the child open the lid by himself. This is scaffolding. Letter B, adult unzip the zipper an inch or two for the child to continue zipping. This is scaffolding. So you have to confirm the scaffolding, B and C. Yung pakitaan mo lang ng sample a little bit and then let them continue. So B and C is scaffolding. So your turn between A and D. The A says, demonstrate swimming strokes for the child to follow, and the D, leading line straw to the hole and let the child put a straw to the hole pack. Ang pinaka hindi scaffolding yan is demonstrate swimming stroke for the child to follow because that is modeling. This one, you give a line straw and then but the child will be the one to put the whole pack. That is scaffolding. Ang hindi scaffolding yan is letter A because letter A is modeling. Now, I keep on talking about modeling. So when you say modeling, pinapakopy mo yung behavior. You let the child observe, and then from the observation that they did, they will copy you. So that is by Albert Bandura. Another term for modeling is social learning theory. So do not be confused because merong ibang books na iba-iba yung terminologies ng theories na ginagamit nila, but actually these are synonymous. So modeling is also called social learning theory, and it is also called observational theory. So synonymous lang yan. Different names lang. Okay, number 30. Modeling will be most likely used by Albert Bandura, letter C. So as what I have said, modeling yung ipapakopy mo. Keyword sa modeling is demonstrating. Gaya ng example kanina na kung gusto mong turuan yung ganito na task, i-demonstrate mo how to open. So you open it in front of the child and then close it. After that one, let the child do the same thing. That is modeling. But then, if it's scaffolding, Levigots ko yun. Modeling, Albert Bandura. So, this is, for additional information, I will just show this one to you. For Albert Bandura, social learning theory, or another term sa theory niya is modeling, or iba ding tawag yan is observational learning. So, according sa theory na ito, the children will pay attention, or yung mga children mag-o-observe sa ginagawa natin. Nag-o-observe sa people around nila, or yung mga models nila. That's why it's called modeling. At saka, ini-encode yung behavior. After that time, possible na i-imitate nila yung behavior. That is why you have to be very careful on what you say around children because they are very observant. They might be paying attention and then they might copy it in the future. So that is the very concept of modeling. Okay, number 31. Gea and Bea often see their teacher brush her teeth, fix her hair, and powder her face after lunch. After some time, the two girls were observed doing the same things. What theory of learning is involved in this situation? So, si Gea and si Bea daw, always niyang nakikita yung teacher niya na mag-brush ng teeth, i-fix yung hair niya, tsaka mag-apply ng powder sa face after ng lunch. After some time, ginaya din nila yung ginawa ni teacher. So, that is under modeling. But then, is modeling there? Wala si modeling, diba? So, that's why I told you, you have to be familiar with other alternative terms. Because synonymous ng modeling by Albert Bandura is observational learning. Pero wala rin si observational learning. Another synonym dyan is social learning. So, letter C. Okay, number 32. Miss Reyes, an English teacher, pointed out to the students specific elements in making well-written paragraphs. What element of observational learning is demonstrated? So as what I have said again, observational learning, modeling, social learning theory, synonymous lang yan. So, para may observational learning, let's look at first this one. Kailangan meron ka nitong tatlo. Let's just summarize it as A, R, and then MM. A, R, MM. Attention, retention, motor reproduction, and motivation. Or pwede din, attention, retention, yung production, pwede din siyang motor reproduction or reproduction or production, synonymous lang yan. And motivation. So, ito yung mga steps na kailangan mo sa social learning theory. Una, dapat meron kang attention. So, para makapi ng bata, they should be paying attention. They should be looking at you. Next is dapat merong retention. Dapat na-remember niya yung ginawa mo. Kasi pag nakinig lang yan pero hindi niya pre-process, hindi niya na-remember, walang retention yan. So, these are the two steps. The third step is reproduction. Reproduction is the process of reproducing. Yung ginagalo na, the act of doing, the act of copying the behavior. So, can you see the difference? Yung attention is, you're just looking, you're just observing. Your retention is, you're remembering. Reproduction is your copying, you're executing. Motivation is it depends on the reward or the punishment. It's either you will continue it or not continue it depending on your will. So motivation talks about the ability to sustain the behavior. Kung gagawin mo ba yan long term or hindi. Going back to the question, Miss Reyes, an English teacher, pointed out to the students specific elements in making well-written paragraphs. Ang keyword dyan is pointed out. Kanya lang, pinoint lang ni Miss Reyes. So in other words, you just say, look at this one, look at these elements. So is it attention? Is it retention? Is it motivation? Or is it production or motor reproduction? It talks about attention. She just wanted to get the attention. Because, why not B? Why not retention? Because it will become retention if Miss Reyes said, memorize this one. But wala siyang ginawa na ganyan. She just pointed out. Why not production or reproduction or motor reproduction? Because wala siyang pinaproduce, wala siyang pina-execute na task. Kanya lang, ano ginawa niya? Pinatingnan lang, pointed out only. So, that is why the answer is attention. So, this is just a summary of what I have said. Attention, retention, motor reproduction, and motivation. Okay, number 33. Social learning theorist Albert Bandura would agree most strongly with which of the following statements regarding learning? So, alin dito yung mas aagrihan ni Bandura? So, going back again, Bandura is more on modeling. Dapat i-show mo yung behavior para yung bata, i-copy niya yung behavior mo. So, let's look at this one. Learning is the result of reinforcing conditions which maintain or increase behavior conducive to it. So, ang keyword ng letter A is reinforcement. Walang sinasabi na ganito si Bandura. Although may na-mention na reinforcement, but then his theory is not focused on reinforcement. Letter A is more inclined with operant conditioning by B.F. Skinner, so which we will discuss later. Letter B, learning occurs vicariously from observing other successes and failures. So you have the clue word there na observing. So when you say observing, that is all about attention, and that is very related to Albert Bandura. So the answer is letter B. But for the sake of discussion, let's continue with letter C and letter D. Learning occurs as students modify their existing schemas to fit new situation. Yung mga keyword dito is schema. Schema is in line with John Piaget. Specifically, when you modify or change existing schema, that is what we call as accommodation. And letter D, learning is the pairing of neutral stimuli with an unconditioned stimulus in order to produce a conditioned response. So this one, mga neutral stimuli, mga unconditioned stimulus, this is classical conditioning by Ivan Pavlov. So letter D will be discussed in detail later. Kasi more on classical conditioning ito. Okay, so di ba, I mentioned about letter D, classical conditioning, which leads us to our next series of questions, which will be all about classical conditioning. And the proponent of that one is Ivan Pavlov. So it's spelled as Pavlov, but then according to my psychology professor, it's supposed to be read as Ivan Pavlov. So let's have a quick overview first before we answer the next question. Ivan Pavlov is the proponent of classical conditioning. According to him, it involves learning to associate an unconditioned stimulus that already brings about a particular response or a reflex with a new conditioned stimulus so that the new stimulus bring about the same response. Okay, so when you read the definitions, parang medyo nosebleed. That's why we will have a practical example. So I will paraphrase this one first. Classical conditioning daw is when merong stimulus or merong something na magbibigay sa iyo ng particular response or magbibigay sa iyo ng reflex. Tapos, always mo siyang i-associate o always mo siyang ipapartner with isang stimulus para yung response mo para sa isa mag-transfer para sa isang stimulus. So, to simplify that one, let's look at this one. You have the unconditioned stimulus, neutral stimulus, unconditioned response, conditioned response. Medyo confusing siya if you have the technical terms. But let's break it down. For example, you have the dog. And then, the dog sees the food. What is the natural response of the dog kung makakita siya ng food? Diba? The natural response of the dog is mag-salivate. Okay, so, but then, we also have the neutral stimulus. Yung neutral stimulus, mag-salivate ka ba kung makita mo ito? Yung whistle, di ba wala? That is what we call neutral stimulus. Na wala kang reaction, neutral lang siya. But when we say conditioning, always mo silang ipa-partner together. So, in the experiment, sinana yung dog na after every whistle or after every tunog nito, there is a food. After tunog nito, there is a food, and then tunog nito, there is a food. Time came na narinig pa lang ng dog ang tunog na ito, ang tunog ng whistle, ay nag-salivate na siya. So that is what we call conditioning. Diba supposed to be ang salivation para dito. But then, in the long run, na-transfer dito because of conditioning. So that's the bottom line of classical conditioning by Ivan Pavlov. Okay, so number 34 is related to that. Yuki is afraid of exams. His teacher usually gives exams every Friday. Now Yuki is afraid of Friday, even though it is not certain whether or not her teacher will give an exam on that day, which theory illustrates Yuki's behavior. So this is an example of classical conditioning by Ivan Pavlov. Kaya diba, supposedly, si Yuki, yung kinatatakutan niya is exam. But then, always na-condition siya na every Friday may exam, Friday may exam, Friday may exam. Time came na, imbis na yung exam yung katakutan niya, yung takot ni Yuki na transfer na sa Friday. So automatically pag Friday, afraid na siya because of classical conditioning. Okay, so another example of classical conditioning, practical example is when you have motion sickness. Di ba yung mga other people, they have motion sickness. Now, di ba you have motion sickness because of course of the motion, nahihilo ka, yung what we call as dagaton, may motion sickness ka. But then there are some people that even though they are not inside the bus yet, even if they're just looking at the bus and then hindi pa sila nakasakay sa bus, just the sight or just by looking at the bus, parang nahihilo ka. Diba? Because nata-transfer yung response mo, hindi ka pa inside the bus, nahihilo ka na. Because that is an example of classical conditioning. Nako-condition mo, na-associate mo yung isang bagay sa stimulus. That is why the response is transferred. Okay, so much for that. Number 35. Pavlov's experiment involving the dog salivation as a reaction to the sound of the ball paved the way for the studies in. Okay, so Ivan Pavlov, as what I have mentioned, that is again classical conditioning. And then number 36, once you understand the concept of classical conditioning, kahit na bali-balihin yung question, it would be very easy for you to understand. Okay, number 36, which type of learning takes place when an originally neutral stimulus comes to elicit a response that was originally given to another stimulus? Anong tawag sa learning niya? Na yung supposed to be response mo para dito na transfer sa isa. So again, that is an example of classical conditioning. And again, I've mentioned this many times, the proponent of classical conditioning is Ivan Pavlov. Okay, so before we proceed with the next items, let me talk a little bit about B.F. Skinner. B.F. Skinner, it's a shortcut for Boris Frederick Skinner. He is the proponent of operant conditioning. So do not confuse this one with classical conditioning because although there's the word conditioning attached to it, magkaiba yung concept nila. Kasi diba yung classical conditioning is there is transfer of response. Whereas for the operant conditioning, there is reinforcement involved. So bottom line ng operant conditioning, for example, kung ikaw na teacher, mahilig kang magbigay ng rewards, yung mga stars, mga candies, that belongs to operant conditioning. So, anything that talks about rewards at saka mga punishment, that is under operant conditioning. Kung sasabihin mo na, pag nabagsak ka, I will confiscate your phone, that is a form of punishment. Under yan sa operant conditioning. If you like also to give rewards, like kung papasa ka, I will buy you a new phone, that is about rewards, that is under operant conditioning pa rin. So just remember, operant conditioning, basta may reward at may punishment. Operant conditioning yan. Okay, so number 37. The reinforcement of a person's responses by presentation or removal of rewards and punishment, basta may reward at saka may punishment, that is operant conditioning. Okay, so I will read it again for it to be clear to you. According to B.F. Skinner, operant conditioning, it's a method of learning that offers true reward and punishment of behavior. So, through operant conditioning, ma-associate mo yung particular behavior with a consequence. Like, for example, pag ayaw mong gawin ito because alam mo na mapapunish ka after, there's a punishment after. That's operant conditioning. Or gusto mong gawin ito because you anticipate that in the future, merong reward. That is under operant conditioning pa rin. So, that is the difference between operant conditioning and then the classical conditioning. Very easy to remember. Keyword ng operant conditioning, rewards at saka punishment. Okay, number 38. J.B. Watson relates that a particular behavior is determined by environmental factors. Which of the following situations can help the student develop a positive attitude towards mathematics? Now, this one is a very, very easy question, but you should not be careless because even if it's very easy, many students get tricked by this question. So let's look at first. You are looking for what will develop a positive attitude. Tell students that math is a difficult subject. Of course, eliminate na yan because that will not develop positive attitude. Give difficult problems to challenge the students. when you give problems, it should be challenging but not that difficult because they will be discouraged. So this will not develop positive attitude. More likely they will hate math because your problems are difficult. C and D. Present lessons from the easiest to the most complex. Should you present lessons from easiest to the complex? Yes. And have a favorable learning atmosphere in the classroom? Yes. Then the thing is, sakto to C and D. So what you will do is go back to the question. The question talks about environmental factors. Letter C, though theoretically correct, but then letter C has nothing to do with the question. Easiest to the most complex, it talks about the content. It has nothing to do with the environment. So, diba, that's why you will say nga when you take the let, parang lahat sagot. Actually, feeling mo lang lahat kasi theoretically correct yung options, but then walang relate sa question. That is why kahit correct pakinggan sa letter C is not the answer because it has nothing to do with what is asked, which is environmental factors. That is why the answer is letter D. Have a favorable learning atmosphere in the classroom. Okay, number 39. A teacher's use of rewards and punishments is not working the same way for all pupils. The reason is probably that why is it na if you give rewards and punishments, you cannot expect na all the time magiging excited sila. There are times that some students will love your reward. There are times also na hindi nila gusto yung reward mo. Why is that? It's because the teacher and pupils have different views of what is rewarding. Maybe sometimes what may be rewarding for you may not be rewarding for them because rewards are subjective. Okay, a practical example of this one. If, for example, wala kang money, tapos sabi ng teacher mo, ang makaka-perfect nito, I will give 500 pesos. So, of course, you will do your best. Kasi, di ba, may reward na 500 pesos. That is very rewarding for you. But what if meron kang kaklase na millionaire? Tapos sabi ng professor niyo na, if you can get perfect, I will give you 500 pesos. For your millionaire classmate, that is not a reward at all. Parang sa kanya, okay, 500 pesos malit na bagay. So that is why it will not work the same way for all pupils. What may be rewarding for you, maybe meh for the other one, wala lang. At what may be rewarding for her or for him may be not rewarding for you. Because we have different views, or teacher and the pupils have different views of what is rewarding. Okay, number 40. You are convinced that whenever a student performs a desired behavior, provide reinforcement, and soon the student learns to perform the behavior on her own. In which principle is your conviction based? So when you give reinforcement, this talks more about operant conditioning. And operant conditioning is under behaviorism. So when you say behaviorism, you try to shape the behavior. Gusto mong i-change yung behavior by giving mga reinforcement. So, actually behavioral learning or behaviorism, yung na-mention natin na classical conditioning by Ivan Pavlov, operant conditioning by B.F. Skinner, observational learning or modeling by Albert Bandura, yung tatlong ito, that is actually under behavioral learning or behaviorism. Yan yung three branches of behaviorism. Because these three talks about the ability of a mentor to shape the behavior of a mentee. Meaning, when you say behaviorism, hindi ito naniniwala na a person is born with that skill. Because when you say behaviorism, ang belief ng behaviorist is kaya niyang i-change yung behavior just by using the right tactics. Okay, so for the next question, it will be more on Lawrence Kohlberg. So I hope you're familiar with Lawrence Kohlberg in your college days. Lawrence Kohlberg is the proponent of moral development theory. So I will just give an overview of moral development theory. So for Lawrence Kohlberg, there are levels and stages that in each level mas magkahayo yung way of reasoning mo. So to give you an idea of the levels and the stages, I prepared a slide for it, wherein I will be showing it to you later. Okay, so number 41. In a social studies class, teacher A presents a morally ambiguous situation and asks his students what they will do. On whose theory is teacher A's technique based? So, this is under Kohlberg or Lawrence Kohlberg. So, according to Lawrence Kohlberg, you will know the level of moral development sa mga students mo by presenting yung mga ambiguous situation or mga situation na makakapag-isip ka talaga ng anong gagawin ko, what should I do with this? Okay, to give you a concrete example, I will present to you a morally ambiguous situation. Okay, for example, you have a wife or you have a husband. Okay, and then imagine your spouse being sick. And then the only medicine na makakagaling sa spouse mo is with a certain doctor. But the thing is, that doctor is overpricing. Sobrang mahal ng gamot na binenta niya. Like, for example, he made it for only 30,000 tapos ang benta niya 500,000. Tapos ikaw, you will do anything to save your spouse. But the thing is, the money that you have is only 100,000. Tapos yung kailangan mo 300,000. So you tried everything para gumaling yung spouse mo. You tried everything to have access to that medicine. But ayaw talagang mag-give ng discount ng doctor. So the question is, are you willing to steal the drug or not? So that is an example of moral dilemma by Lawrence Colbert. Na bibigyan ka ng situation tapos may babato sa'yo na question, gagawin mo ba ito or hindi? So that's a moral dilemma. And then depending on your way of reasoning, you will be classified kung saan nga level ka nakalagay. So I talked about levels and stages. So these are the different levels and stages according to Lawrence Colbert. So he has 3 levels wherein merong pre-conventional, merong conventional, at saka merong post-conventional, or in other books that is autonomous principle. And then in every level merong stages. You have the stage 1, the stage 2, and up to stage 6. So for every level, there are 2 stages. That's why a total of 6 stages. So in here, you have the names of each stage in each level. So for some books, pwede synonymous. That's why you have to be very careful. Like for example, itong interpersonal concordance orientation. For some books, it's called good boy, nice girl orientation. So the concept is just the same. It's just that may ibang books na iba yung keywords or iba yung labels na ginagamit nila. So let's look at first this one. Before we proceed with that one, let's look at this one first. How many stages are in Kohlberg's moral development? How many stages? So don't confuse that one. Ang level is 3, but the stages are 6. So the answer is letter C. So we will have an overview of the different stages. So for the level 1, di ba sabi ko 3 level, every level 2 stages. So level 1 is the pre-conventional stage. Under niya is the stage 1 and stage 2. When you say pre-conventional stage, the basis of doing something is just to avoid it's just to avoid punishment or to get rewards. So, like for example, sa stage 1, obedience and punishment orientation. Ginagawa mo lang yung isang object para ma-avoid ang punishment. Whereas, for the stage 2, you're just doing something, instrumental orientation, you're just doing something para may makuha ka rin kapalit. So that's under level 1. Again, level 1 pre-conventional stage, pre-conventional level, meron siyang stage 1, stage 2. Ang stage 1 is, ginagawa mo ang isang bagay so that you will avoid punishment. Ang stage 2 is you're doing something para may makuha kang kapalit. For example, you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. Or I will let you copy my answer if you will let me copy your answer. That is stage 2. Another thing is the level 2, the conventional level. Under ng level 2 is the stage 3 at saka stage 4. So, ang focus ng conventional is that you will do something so that you will fit in the group. Or you are doing something because it's in the law. So that is conventional stage. So, conventional level. So for the stage 3, that is what we call as good boy, nice girl orientation. So meaning you're just doing it for the sake of having the approval of other people. So, like for example, ginagawa mo lang ito para they will think that you are a good boy or a nice girl. Like, for example, ayaw mong mag-cheat kasi yung motivation mo is para sa kanila you are a good boy or a nice girl. Whereas for the stage 4, your motivation is the law and order. You are doing it para hindi mo ma-violate yung law. Like for example, going back to stage 3, you don't want to cross in the pedestrian, you don't, gusto mong mag-cross sa pedestrian lane kasi para makita ka ng iba and then you're a good boy or a nice girl. That is stage 3. Pero pag stage 4 ka na, you always cross in the pedestrian lane because that is in the law. You don't care what other people will say. So that is stage 4. So next, level 3 is composed of stages 5 and 6. When you say post-conventional, that talks about your conscience or yung moral compass mo, yung konsensya mo. So for the stage 5, you do it, you're willing to break something, you're willing to break some laws because you believe it is the best. So example of stage 5 is when you are willing to steal the medicine for your wife because the life of a person is more important than property. That is stage 5 na. Kasi hindi kaya ng konsensya mo pag wala kang ginawa. So that is stage 5. Whereas the stage 6 or the highest stage, the ideal stage, is when you do it because of equality. So going back, di ba yung stage 5 is you're willing to steal because the life of your wife is more important than property. But if stage 6 na yan, even if that's just someone you barely knew, kahit hindi mo kakilala, kahit enemy mo pa, you are willing to steal for that person because the life of that person is more important than property. So that is stage 6. So those are the stages. I will just recap this one. These are the stages, diba? Stage 1 to 6, and then each dalawang stage per level. So I hope you remember that one. So going back to the question, number 43. Student Dina says, I have to go to school on time. This is what the rule says. In what level of moral development is the student? So yung motivation niya is the rule. So di ba yung kung pre-conventional yung motivation mo is reward and punishment, kung conventional yung motivation mo is the rule and the law, kung post-conventional yung motivation mo is your conscience. So number 43, this is what the rule says. So that is letter B, conventional. So this one, specifically, stage 4 in conventional, yung law and order orientation. Na ginagawa mo ito because it's in the rule. It's in the law. Okay, number 44. One stage of moral development is illustrated by interpreting fairness, reciprocity, and equal sharing in a physical, pragmatic way, such as in you scratch my back and I scratch yours. Anong stage daw dyan? Na yung gagawin mo ang isang bagay, pero dapat may kapalit. Like kung i-scratch ko yung back mo, dapat i-scratch mo rin yung back ko. Or in the classroom situation, we commonly hear na, okay, I will let you copy my answer. But next time, if you have an answer, let me copy also. Anong stage ng morality niyan na dapat may kapalit? Na bibigyan kita nito, pero pag ako naman ang walang paper, bigyan mo din ako. So ano yan? So that is stage 2, di ba? Or instrumental relativist orientation. And that is under pre-conventional level. So this one, level 1, pre-conventional, specifically stage 2. Number 45. BJ, a first-year high school student, noticed that during their final examination, many of his classmates cheated. Because he observed this, he also cheated. In one stage of Kohlberg's theory was BJ's action. Okay, in this case, ginawa niya ito kasi nakita niya sa kanyang mga classmates and of course, he wanted to fit in. That is why he copied the behavior. That is good boy, nice girl orientation. Now, you might be asking, why is it good boy, nice girl orientation? Na hindi naman good boy yung action niya, hindi naman siya nice girl sa action niya. Now, when you say good boy, nice girl orientation, it does not mean that you are literally a good boy or a nice girl. You are still under the stage if you are doing it for the sake of social acceptance. So in the eyes of the peers, you are good. So even if you're cheating, but then the others are also cheating, so you want to be good in their eyes, even if you're doing a bad thing, that belongs to good boy, nice girl orientation. So even if you're doing it for the peer pressure, even if that's a negative thing, but then ginawa mo for you to fit in, for you to what do you call that one? Yeah, to fit in, and then you're doing it so that baka hindi ka ba OP, you're doing it because of peer pressure, that still belongs to good boy, nice girl orientation, and that is under level 2 or conventional stage. Okay, number 46. When the child develops conventional morality, his behavior is based on what? Okay, diba? Let's just have a recap. Pre-conventional level is more on rewards and punishment. Conventional level is more on mga law at saka rules. Post-conventional level is more on conscience at saka yung moral compass mo. Now, the child develops conventional morality. Let's look at the options. Letter A, personal satisfaction. So, para sa self mo lang, na satisfaction, para may makuha kang reward, this is pre-conventional. Next, letter D, internalized ideals to avoid self-condemnation. Para hindi mo ma-condemn yung self mo, this is more on the conscience, post-conventional to. The desire to avoid severe physical punishment. Para ayaw mong ma-punish, this is pre-conventional, specifically stage 1. The only conventional morality here is letter B. You're doing it because of the expectations of the group and then the approval of the society. So this one. This is conventional stage. If you're in conventional level. If you're in the stages 3 and 4, that is conventional level. Okay, number 47. Which is the ideal stage of moral development? So the ideal stage of moral development is the last stage, the stage 6, which is otherwise known as the universal ethical principle. So letter B. So this one. This is the ideal stage because not all of us not all of us are capable of reaching this stage. This is like selfless love. So example of this one is when you're willing to steal a medicine for the person you hate the most para lang ma-get well yung person na pinaka-hate mo. That's an example of stage 6. So can you do that? Diba? Yung stage 6 is para na sa, it's like being a saint. Yung mga Mother Teresa level. So stage 6 yan. Number 48. The concept of right and wrong as defined by the conscience and self-chosen principles occurs during the. So when it talks about conscience and then the self-chosen mga principles mo, mga ideals mo, yung moral compass mo, that is post-conventional level. Okay, number 49. So this one, stages 5 and 6 are under post-conventional level, or in other books, autonomous level, autonomous principle level. So that's just synonymous. Number 49. In guiding the development of attitudes and values, a teacher should try to shape students' attitudes all the time, provide exemplary models, be the sole authority, or simply discuss moral values with students. Now, just by looking at it, you may think na all of them are answers. But actually, some of the options here contain words that make it negative. Okay, like for example, letter A, shape students' attitudes. Correct na siya sana because of course you should shape the student's attitude. But when you look at, there is all the time. So parang demanding. Dapat all the time shape mo yung attitude. So naging negative. Okay, what else? Letter D. Discuss moral values. Correct na sana. Pero may word na simply. So simply discuss. Kung sa atin pa yung i-discuss mo lang yung moral values. So supposed to be correct. Naging negative because of simply. Letter C. Be the authority. Yes, of course, dapat meron kang authority. But then, naging negative because of the word sole. Be the sole authority. So, kung sasabihin mong be the sole authority, dapat ikaw lang yung authority. Naging negative siya. So, be careful of these words, mga all the time, yung mga simply, because they may sound correct, but actually they are wrong. That is why, for number 49, eliminate A, C, and D. The answer is letter B. Provide exemplary models. Okay. And the last question for the set 1. Number 50. The teacher who understands the adolescents' need to conform will what? So, they have the need to conform. So, eliminate now letter A na you will use sarcasm as a disciplinary device. They have the need to be accepted tapos magsasarcasm ka. So, eliminate that one. Disregard unique responses in discussions and then examinations. No, don't disregard. There are various opinions. Lecture students on their weakness of character, that is very wrong. But in fact, some teachers do this. They spend the rest of the time lecturing, pinpointing the weakness of each student. They have the need to conform, so don't do that. The only answer here is that if you understand that they have the need to conform or they have the need to fit in, you will establish a learning climate that fosters feelings of security. Okay, so that's it for the end of set 1.